Hey, it's John at Tinderbox Arts. In this video, I'm going to show you a second valve check on this R1200RT. This is a 2012 model. Now, this does not have a lot of miles on the bike, and I should be doing the third check, and maybe I am, but I'm not really sure. So here's the story. I did a previous video of my first check on this bike, and that was at a little over 10,000 miles because I bought this bike used. I really wasn't sure whether they did the first valve check, which should have occurred at 6,000 miles. So I did one at a little over 10,000 miles. I was hoping to catch up, and I was going to skip the 12,000 because what's the point, and jump to the 18,000, but life got in the way. So now the bike has a little over 19,000 miles. So between the last valve check and now, we're at about 8,700 miles. So we're going to see if it really made any difference. I suspect it probably didn't. I have the specs from the previous valve check, and now when we do this one, we'll see where we are. These are the tolerances we need to meet. And when I did the previous valve check, I was within those tolerances, and we're just going to see now, 8,700 miles later, how much change has really occurred. All right, so quick review how we get access to measuring these valves. Cover has to come off. In order to take the cover off, you need to remove anything like this, any protectors that you have. These bars, these crash bars, can usually stay on. We need to be able to turn the engine over, so you need to remove the spark plug here and one on the other side as well so that the engine will turn over easily. Of course, there are 2 spark plugs per cylinder on this bike, and the other one on the bottom you can leave in, but because there is a little bit of oil and it can get messy, you may just want to remove that just so you don't have to clean everything up. And I do put a pan underneath. It's not a lot of oil, but a little bit drips out. So all you really need to do is this upper part here. This lower part, that cover that I just took off, it's not necessary, and this is where the other spark plug and the other coil are. I just do this because I find that oil can sometimes drip in there and then it stinks when you start it back up again. So for me, it's not that big a deal. Just take that cover off. And in this case, I will be replacing the spark plugs anyway, so you would need to do that if that's the case. Okay, with the cover off, that exposes the valves. We'll get to in a minute. Now I am going to do the other side because I need to have the spark plug out so I can turn the engine over easily anyway. And it's just easier to do it all in one swoop here. So I'll get the other side opened up and then we'll start measuring the valves. You can see there's not a lot of oil, but there is enough there that if it drips underneath, you know, it could just make a mess and start smoking on you. So I just prefer to take that cover off. All right, to check the valves, you need to have the side that you're investigating be at top dead center on the compression stroke. The way you know that is, I'm going to get real close here. There's a little mark, an indicator right here where I'm pointing, okay? And if I look down, there's another mark right here. When those two marks line up, you know you're in the right place and you can check your clearances. One more thing to note is that these followers right here will be loose. You'll be able to spin this around, and if I get underneath here, you can see I can feel that that's loose. If that's not loose, you're not in the right place. Now, in order to get these marks to line up, put it in a higher gear and then turn the back wheel. And it's kind of a pain if you don't have a helper, you have to go back and forth. But if this mark and this mark lines up, then you're in good shape. All right, let's get caught up here. The spec, as you recall, intake should be 0.13 to 0.23 millimeter. Exhaust should be 0.30 to 0.40 millimeter. So my previous valve check, I was within spec, although I was getting towards the top in some areas, in other words, too loose. So the exhaust previously was 0.38. On the left side, on top and bottom, and on the right side, it was 0.36 top and bottom. So within spec, not a problem. And previously, the intake on the top was 0.20, intake on the bottom 0.21. This measurement on the right side, on the intake top, right side, was 0.22 millimeter, and on the bottom 0.20 millimeter. So within spec, but this one here was getting towards the end. So now let's look at my current measurement. Again, on the left side, exhaust, top and bottom were identical. On the right side, I had 0.37, which was slightly looser, and 0.36, which was the same. So exhaust, I'm in good shape, not a problem. Now the intake, not a whole lot of change, but on the top, on the left side, I'm at 0.21. On the bottom on the left side, I'm at 0.22. So just slightly looser than it was before. That could be a function of temperature, or maybe when I measured it, I wasn't quite as careful on one time or the other, but it's pretty close. Now on the right side, initially I was at 0.23 millimeter on the top and 0.21 millimeter on the bottom. So that 0.23 millimeter is, again, looser than it was before. And I'm right at the end of the spec there. So this is just, right at the edge of being too loose. It's okay, but it's right on the edge. So I thought, well, let me just take my micrometer, and that's when I removed two of the followers and just checked the shims. And as luck would have it, I was able to swap these two shims. So by doing that, now instead of 0.21 millimeter, I'm at 0.20 millimeter. And instead of 0.23 millimeter, I'm at 0.22 millimeter. So I'm better as far as getting in within spec. It just happened to work out that way, and sometimes it does. Now, with all these measurements here, I'm definitely within spec. I'm on the looser side of the spec, but I'm within spec, and I feel good about it. Actually, I'm about to go on a trip, which will take me about 5,000 to 6,000 miles. And, at the end of that, I'll probably need to do this all again. So it'll be interesting how it plays out. But in my case, this second valve clearance check, things were either identical to what they were, or on the intake side, slightly looser. Now I have everything back together, and when I put these C-clips back on, I felt a good click. Nonetheless, I'm just going to take the tire and spin it around through one rotation, check again just to make sure nothing's loose and everything's good. So that's my second valve check and what should be the third valve check for this bike. I just don't know if they did the first one or not. Now, before I button this up, let me just mention the gaskets. I did buy replacements just because of age more than anything else. It wasn't leaking. If you decide to do that, you have one here, the main one, you have one here, and then on the cover you have one here and one here. Now, I'm looking at this, and even though I bought them, I think I might hold off and maybe put them on the next time because they're not leaking. They actually look like they're in decent shape. So I'll go ahead and save those other ones that I purchased for the next time.